So, good evening, everyone. Today, we are going to start with a new discussion on the topic Nicomachean Ethics. And here with us, a lot of scholars are there, and most especially our speaker of today, Professor Daniel. He is going to discuss about this concept in a great detail, and we are going to interact with him and ask a lot of questions. That is going to be very engaging and intellectual discussion too. So, welcome everyone. Let us start with our discussion today. So, Professor Daniel is a professor of philosophy, and we have with us Aisha, who is philosophy scholar. We have with us other scholars, Saima and Bhavna, and I'm Dr. Madhvi. So, we are going to start with this discussion. Over to you, Dr. Daniel.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Professor Madhvi, and for people who came today. This is a very a topic that's very dear to my heart. I've taught this book for several semesters. I teach a course called Ethics of the Apocalypse, and the idea is that we have ethical theory and we tie it into apocalyptic themes. So the apocalypse would be like the end of the world. A lot of religious traditions, there's this idea of the collapse of civilization, the end of time. And so we talk about some apocalyptic films, dystopian films, and we tie it into ethical theory. And so, for instance, this summer, I'm reading a book called Blindness. I've just started it, and it's about it's a very dystopian novel, but kind of very terrifying, where people start suddenly going blind. It becomes like an epidemic. And but in any case, this topic of this talk will be the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, which students they find kind of initially kind of boring. Like, why are we reading this very old text? But in fact, it's full of insights, and I really have not myself extracted all the insights he has. So this book is over 2,000 years old. However, still very fresh, and students are very impressed by how 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 rigorous his thinking is and how insightful he is. So I believe it's a very great achievement of ethics using reason. So there's no, a lot of our ethics is based upon religion, but for Aristotle, he's simply using his reason to think the good human life and what it means to be happy. So he wrote this book for his son. His father's name was Nicomachus, but in Greek, in this time, they would also name the son after the grandfather. So his father's Nicomachus, and he also has a son, Nicomachus. So we can assume that he's directing this book as kind of a guide to his son. But it's also pertinent to all of us. So I think I can't cover the entire book, of course. It's quite long. Here's my copy of it. But I can begin with some initial ideas and go from there. Okay? And then we can have Q&A towards the end. Okay, so the first thought is that every action, every decision that we take, it is aiming at some good. Okay, so every action has a telos. This is the Greek word, Telos. So every action that we take, we are rational beings. And so we're aiming at some purpose or some good. Of course, parts of our bodies are just behaving in a reflexive way. So we're not deliberately seeking anything. We will respond reflexively. Our bodies have their own logic, all right? But when we make decisions, we are aiming at some purpose because we're rational. So we're not like, a planet. A planet revolving around the sun does not have a purpose in mind. Okay, a rock rolling down a hill is not trying to achieve something. It's just doing, it's just acting according to its nature, responding to external forces. It's not aiming at a certain good. But when we act, we're trying to achieve something. So Aristotle would call this a final cause. There's different kinds of causes. One of them is a final cause, which means that we have an end. There's something we're trying to do, and that's driving our behavior. So each of our actions has a telos. So for instance, this conversation has a telos. We're trying to grow intellectually, to build community, and to learn. So that's our telos. We have a certain end in joining this discussion group. So, and you think about it, even really bad actions, even when people do evil things, when they commit acts of violence, when they hurt other people, they're still trying to achieve some good. There's always going to be a telos. It's just the nature of human action. We're not just accidental. We're trying to accomplish a purpose. We have a final cause. Even in evil action, people are getting some kind of gratification. People who are very violent, well, they're getting a gratification from that. They're getting some sort of pleasure or, some sort of sense of power, maybe. So we can see that human motivation is aiming at some good. So now, sometimes the good is an activity. Other times it's a product. Okay, so it makes this distinction. And I think it's kind of interesting because sometimes we try to make something. We're trying to make, like we build a house. We're going to build a house that is a good to provide shelter. And that is a product. But other times, the good is an activity. We're trying to achieve a good through some activity that has no product. So maybe like friendship could be a activity that is a good. It's not a product. It's not a thing that we make. It is an activity that we engage in, and that is a good. It produces, a good friendship should produce a sense of support, a sense of well-being, joy, pleasure. It's an activity, not a product. Whereas like you make a house, you can make a meal, that would be a product. So you have activities and products. And so clearly this gives us a sense of human motivation. So we're all trying to achieve something. Sometimes we achieve it in selfish ways. Sometimes we're more interested in the community and the common good. We're trying to achieve a product, making something, building something. Like Professor Mavi, I saw that you were looking to some space exploration. You were at a site in India where they were exploring space. That is a product, but also an activity of exploration. Humanity seeks to explore, go beyond our comfort zone. So we have all these motivations at the individual level, but also now at the social level. We look at society, right? And in society, we have many different groups of people, and they're all trying to achieve different ends. Okay, so they all have a telos, right? They're not just behaving accidentally, like a rock going down a hill. It's not trying to do anything. It's just following gravity. Whereas human beings, we have ends, and in society we have different groups. So what is medicine trying to do? Medicine is trying to achieve health. That's the goal of people in medicine. They're trying to make people well physically, right? So it's mainly focused on the body. Maybe psychology, philosophy. We have an end of mental, spiritual health. Medicine also is trying to cure sickness. People getting, various illnesses of the body. The end of medicine is health. Okay, and he talks about boat building. All right, people need to make boats, and that's a product that people make. People make a product that is useful, helps us to travel and to transport goods across the ocean. Also, generalship, to become a general. What is the telos of a general? What is your job? Your job is to win the war, right? Your job is to win the war and to learn how to do strategy. And also, people are running a household. Um, their job, he says, is to build wealth. So if you're running a household, you're the leader of the household, you're part of a couple, you want to protect the wealth and invest the wealth of your household. So these are all the various purposes people have, and they're in various sectors of society. So now we can imagine this picture of society. Everyone's doing their activity. Sometimes it gets dysfunctional, right? It becomes dysfunctional. So you can think about it in terms of like, well, maybe a certain sector of society could do something that's not lining up with its proper telos. So maybe you know um, the end of medicine is health, but maybe people in medicine start to think that maybe they want to make money, they want to get rich, and so you see certain abuses like people you know trying to take advantage of sick people and selling a necessary drug for a very exorbitant price, right? Not providing healthcare for a reasonable, affordable price because the goal now is becoming to get rich. The goal is no longer health. So you can see how maybe certain sectors could become dysfunctional because they're not following their proper telos. But we have this idea of society and its various telos. So on the individual level, the social level, we're all pursuing a telos. So we have this image that's just the beginning of the theory, okay? So now also we can see that there's a kind of hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of these goods, okay? So what he's saying is that you start small, and then that activity is for a bigger activity, and then for another activity, and for an even bigger activity. So here's the example he uses, okay? He talks about making a bridle. Okay, so what is a bridle? It's about riding a horse. You are riding a horse and you need a bridle to control the horse. Okay, so you use the bridle to just pull the horse. It has a little thing in its mouth and it can feel you pulling. And the horse, if it's a trained horse, will move according to your pressure on the bridle. So someone has to make the bridle, right? Someone's out there making the bridle. That's their telos. Okay, that's their job in life. But the bridle is not an end in itself. So you don't just make bridles just to make bridles. You're making bridles for a higher purpose. So the next purpose would be horsemanship. There are people who ride horses, they take care of horses, and they buy these bridles and other things so they can ride the horse. Well, are people just riding horses for their own sake? They're out there just riding horses, that's all they do? Well, no. We have horses too. And think back in the ancient world, okay? So we're in the ancient world. They don't have cars. They don't have planes. So they're using horses for what? To get around, transportation, also in war. They use horses in the warfare. So this is another higher purpose. So you don't just ride horses for the sake of horses. You are using the horse for other things. So, and why are you fighting a war? Is that just the end in itself? Is that just because you like war and that's why you do it? No, of course not. You don't fight a war just because you like war. Maybe some people do, and that's kind of maybe a problem they have. But you fight a war for some objective. You fight a war maybe to protect your country, to expand your territory, to gain new resources, okay? So war is also subordinate to the generals. The generals are studying how to pursue war. And so you can see there's a hierarchy here. You start with bridles, then you have horsemanship, then you have warfare, then you have generalship, and maybe there's even higher levels. So this is how society is structured. You have people doing little things, like maybe someone could be, their job is to just make windows. They make windows. But why do you make windows? for a house. Why do you make houses? So people can live in there. All right. So there's all these levels of telos. So we can see that human society, because we're rational beings, we're all working towards some goal. And that's our whole life. Okay. So the idea is that you have different sciences. The science of being a general, the science of making a bridle. And some are ruling sciences and some are subordinate. Okay, so you have certain things that are like more, they're more expansive, right? So for like a war, you need a lot of little things at the micro level. To run a war, you have to have weapons, you have to have food, you have to have people who do medical care. They're all at the micro level and they're subordinate to the general end, which is, okay, we have to win this war. All right. And then what's beyond the war? Well, there's even more ruling sciences. So you have this hierarchy of sciences. Ruling sciences are above and they oversee the subordinate sciences. Okay. So now we get to a key concept. Okay, so we have all these ends with all these goals. Does it ever stop? We might ask. Are we always pursuing an end for the sake of another end? For the sake of another end? For the sake of another end? So is our life like this cycle where we just do something and then we do it for something else, for something else, for something else? It's almost like it's like the myth of Sisyphus, right? The myth of Sisyphus, the story of Sisyphus, he's pushing a boulder up a hill and he just does it again and again and again because the boulder rolls back down the hill when he's done. So what is the purpose here? Are we just doing things for the sake of something else, for the sake of something else, for the sake of something else? Well, Aristotle says no. No, we're not. Because there is what he calls the highest good. Okay? There's this highest good. And this is something that we desire and we seek only because of itself. It is not a means. It is this final end. We only value it because of itself. So what could this be, right? We do many things during the day, right? You eat a meal. Is that the highest good? Well, the meal is certainly maybe pleasurable, but your goal of the meal is not to just eat the meal. You want to keep living, right? And keep pursuing your activities. So that's not the highest good. You know, you take medicine, maybe. Maybe you take some medicine. That's a good thing, but is it the highest good? No, because you take the medicine for something else. You want to stay healthy. You want to feel good. We were just talking about me playing softball. Is that my highest good? Well, we were saying that you know you need to refresh yourself. You need to connect with the community. These are other ends that come from playing softball. So, but then what is this end that we only desire and seek it for its own sake, and also every other thing that we seek it because of this highest good. So we have this highest good, and it kind of organizes our life. It organizes our life. We're building our life around this highest good. It is this ultimate value, and everything we do is some way connecting to this highest good. So we have this concept, and so why is it not possible for us to just do something always as a means? So we can imagine like an infinite series of means where we do something for something else, for something else, for something else, and so on and so on. Why must there be this peak? There must be a highest good. Well, he says if we were really seeking this infinite series, okay, then it would go on without limit. And he says our desire would just be empty and futile. Okay, so if everything is a means, everything, we're only doing it for something else. Okay, then we don't really value anything. So think about that. If everything you do is just to do something else, right? You exercise. Well, why? You want to be healthy and look good. All right. Well, why do you want to be healthy? All right, so that you can live a long life. What if everything that you do is a means to something else? Well, then what really do you value? So everything is just a way to something else. Well, then what's really motivating you? So there must be this ultimate value. Okay, so he's looking at our motivation and he's saying that it can't just be a cycle like Sisyphus. There has to be something that you value for its own sake. It can't be this infinite series of means. So there must be this highest good. Okay, so, and this is the method he's going to take. Okay, he talks about like an archer, someone shooting a bow. All right, and they have to focus on a target. Right. So when we do ethics, I think this is a very smart strategy he has. When we do ethics, we want to aim at this highest good. What is it that is of ultimate value? What are we all trying to seek? Like, what is the meaning of our life? What is this ultimate value? And so we're like archers. We are aiming a bow. We need to have a target. And so when we do ethics, we're thinking about this ultimate value, not the other little stuff, but what it's all aiming at. Okay, so we should try to aim at this highest good, and moreover, this highest good is not only for the individual. So as individuals, we have a highest good, but as a society, we have a highest good. So there's some science that is ruling over all the other sciences. This will be the science of the highest good. Because so you have all the other sciences, people are doing their various things. They're making products, or they pursue medicine, or they're engineers. Okay, well, what is it all aiming at? Because here's a key idea here. What is the ultimate ruling science for the community? For the community as a whole? Because remember, for both Plato and Aristotle, the soul of the individual and the society are parallel. So the soul and the society are parallel. So there's a ruling science for the individual and for society. So the first clue we get is that the ruling science for society is political science. This is the highest science. So what does he mean here? I think we have to think outside of the box here. So we think of political science as a kind of academic discipline. We have it here in the US. I'm assuming you have it in India too. You're studying like, voting tendencies and, what different demographic groups like, how they think about political issues, talking about various court cases. Well, that's not what he means. That's not what he means. He's talking about a group of people that study the highest good. So I think it's more like a philosopher king in Plato's sense, where it's someone who is contemplating the ultimate good for society. And their job is to organize all the different activities so that they achieve this ultimate good. So you have people in political science, they're not just studying like demographics and voting data and polling and, the various political figures and their positions. No, these are people they're like philosophers. They're thinking about what is of ultimate value, and they're looking over all the different things people do, making sure that they're organized properly, right? So you want to have you don't want to have people like the generals shouldn't be taking over. The generals will just make the society very warlike. They're going to always be concerned about war. No, we need to have war under the highest good. So if we have to have war, it should be done in the right way at the right time. The people who are in medicine, they should not be taking over the society. Okay, they should have their role, and they do not govern society. Okay, so we have this highest science. It's political science, but it's more like a the role of a philosopher contemplating the highest good. So maybe I should continue maybe for 10 more minutes. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, great. So 10 more minutes, I'll pause for a Q&A. Okay, so okay, so we have these ideas forming, right? So we're trying to do ethics, trying to find a way to build character and to live in a healthy way. And so our first thought is, well, there's this highest good. What is of ultimate value? Okay. Well, we have to kind of take a detour now because there's a problem. There's a problem here. And this problem has to do with this group called the sophist. There's a group called the sophist that Aristotle and Plato were very aware of, okay? And the sophists are people who think they can argue for any side of a case. They go around and they teach what's called rhetoric. And they're using argument to, they think they can argue for any side. So they think that there's really no truth. They think there's no truth. So if they can argue for a contradiction, they can say this side is true and the opposite is true. They use argument. They think that there's no truth. There's a really fascinating piece. I think it's by this sophist Gorgias, and he says that the argument is there's something and there's also nothing. He argues for both sides. There's something and there's nothing. So you have this group of people, and they're training people in Greece to argue for anything. Okay? And they would be equivalent to people like in the media or people in politics or law. They really have no values. They have no principles. They'll argue for anything, whatever is convenient. So you have these sophists, and Aristotle says there's some people who say that what is good depends only on convention, not on nature. This is a key thought here. Okay? So what does he mean? What is good rests on convention, not nature. So what does this mean? It means that maybe what is good is just a matter of a social custom. And there is no human nature. Okay, so we have various social customs, right? So the first one I think of is like in the UK, right? People drive on the left-hand side of the road. Here in the US, we're on the right-hand side of the road. Okay, that is a convention. There really is no need to be on the right-hand or left-hand side. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of the social custom. Okay? There's really no like compelling basis for why they're on the left side and we're on the right side. It could be flipped, right? Another one could be like the way we greet each other. In the US, we like to do handshakes. You know, if you're just meeting someone for the first time, You just shake their hand. Okay. In other countries, it's a little bit different. Maybe they have a bow. Maybe they bow. Maybe it's even like a kiss. All right, they'll kiss on the cheek. Uh, and there's really nothing wrong with any of these practices. They're just a certain custom. Okay, so maybe everything that we do, the sort of rules we have are just conventions, and they're not based upon nature. So that the idea would be that, okay, no, we have a human nature, and so certain things are just objectively, universally wrong. So people talk like this, right? They say like, we have these values. So like the UN, right? The UN says there are universal human rights. Okay? It doesn't matter what culture you're part of, where you're from, historical period, geographical location, there are universals. Well, the sophists are saying no. Those are only conventions. So this idea of like this universal values, the sophists are saying no, because they're saying that you can argue for anything. So their position is very radical. They're saying that there are no universals. This idea of this sort of imperialism of a value system, there's a human nature. Just being human gives you a certain set of values. They reject this idea. If you reject this idea, though, how can you do ethics? Ethics becomes strictly a matter of relativity. Okay, so if you say that it's all convention, everything is convention, then it just becomes a matter of what I happen to think based upon my upbringing, my culture, and there's nothing objective about ethics. So this is very dangerous because it seems as though everything in ethics is slippery. There's really nothing certain. There's no objective value. So Aristotle thinks of this as kind of a threat. And so does Plato, right? So Plato thinks of that there's a form, there's a universal form of the good. And Aristotle says, he does not agree with Plato. He does not think there are these forms, but he does believe that there's got to be some sort of objective truth in ethics. It's not just a matter of varying convention and varying rhetoric. Okay. So, however, he's a little bit more savvy than Plato. He's more sensitive to context. So let me explain. He says that something that's good could actually be harmful in certain context. So he's aware of context. Think about this. Something good, maybe wealth, okay? Wealth could be something good. All right? When you have wealth, you can achieve a lot more than you can when you're poor. Well, for some people, their wealth can become a bad thing. In some context, wealth can actually be harmful. We can imagine them, right? Maybe someone gets wealthy and they become like arrogant, and they alienate their friends. Okay, so let's say like I get super wealthy and I become arrogant and nobody likes me anymore. Okay, or let's say that someone is brave. Someone has bravery. That's a good thing, right? To be brave is good. You're taking risks. You are not afraid. Okay. Well, bravery can be also a bad thing. Sometimes you can be too brave. You can like put yourself in situations that are bad. You can take too many risks. You can kind of mess things up because you're just too outspoken. So this is Aristotle saying that, okay, yeah, the sophists in a way are kind of right because something that's good may not be good in every case. So I see this as like kind of like a situational ethics where you would not have absolute rules. Like, for instance, Kant, right? Kant is perhaps notorious for saying that you can never lie. Never. You can never, never lie. But in the situational ethics, it would depend upon the situation. Okay, so maybe for the most part, lying is bad. For the most part, we have to tell the truth to other people. But there are certain cases where telling the truth might be bad. So this is a kind of situational ethics. And so he says that he's not a sophist. He's not saying that it's all just a matter of words, that you can just argue for anything. But what he's saying is that there is a truth in ethics that is rough and in outline. He says it roughly and in outline. So what does that mean? It means that we can have like a kind of like a general sense that this is right or wrong, but not in every single circumstance. So it's more fine-tuned. There's not this universal form of good. It's more based upon general principles that can have exceptions. There's always exceptions to the rule. So maybe this is more sensible and prudent. Okay, so I'll close here with just one more point. So we have to be aware of the kind of exactness we can get in ethics. Ethics is not this exact science. It's not like math, where there's one right answer. Okay, math has one right answer. In not all parts of math, but in math, we can prove something, and there's one right answer. There's no room for opinion. But in ethics, it's not this exact science. There's going to be contextual variation. So he says ethics is more like rhetoric. So when we do rhetoric, we're trying to convince people, right? We're trying to convince people of a certain point of view. Well, is there an exact science where you can tell, well, there's one right way to convince people? No, there's many ways. It would vary from context to context. And so rhetoric is something that is kind of like ethics because it's not an exact science. It's not something that has absolutes. Okay? So I don't want to exhaust people too much. So it's been about 45 minutes. I hope people enjoyed that talk so far. And I'll just pause here for Q&A. People want to jump in and let's just discuss this.
Yeah, I think it is a very interesting discussion. I am still, kind of thinking on the thing that you have mentioned about the goodness, about the life that we should live, definitely. And you also
Yeah,
mentioned about hierarchy, right? You
the
have,
hierarchy.
first of all, yeah, you talked about the rational beings and our purpose of this human life, right?
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
purpose of human life is towards goodness.
yeah. There's an ultimate purpose that we're trying to get.
Yes, that's
This
an
is
ultimate.
the highest good.
Yeah,
And so we have various steps we take during the day, but there's an ultimate purpose that organizes all these steps.
yeah.
So yeah,
Okay. Any questions so far?
yeah,
I have a question.
Sure.
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 So, it was said that this ultimate purpose, the science that is
Yeah,
going to rule, is supposed to be political science, and there is supposed to
yes,
be constant deliberation by a group of philosophers on such a science, right? In order
yes.
to determine what the good is. So, then wouldn't the good be ultimately then fluctuating? Wouldn't it be relative? How would it be universal?
Well, so he's not a sophist, right? So the sophist would say you can argue for anything. So if the sophists were in charge, right, they would simply dispense with the idea of truth. They would say we can argue for anything. So we could say that I can be a communist, I can be a capitalist. So one day I'm a capitalist, one day I'm a communist, and I'll argue for both sides. And there's no objective truth about that. So for Aristotle, the philosophers are debating, but they're able to discern some objective truth. Now, it's more of a situational truth. So it's more pragmatic because something is not maybe good, but it's not good in all cases. So they're having these debates, but they're not like completely chaotic or anarchic like the sophists, because the sophists are going to say, whatever suits me in the moment is what I will argue for. But Aristotle says, no, there's got to be some sort of objective good, although we can't guarantee that it's an absolute good. So yeah, so it's not like the Platonic, we're going to contemplate this universal form, but it's also not a sophistical free-for-all. For Aristotle, there is some truth, there is some objective account of what the highest good is.
Yeah. I have another question, which is kind of
Sure,
conceptual. When
sure.
Aristotle is using the word good, what does he exactly mean?
So he's using the word telos. Telos is the Greek word. It's Telos, and it's like a purpose. So you have a kind of objective or a purpose that is the good. So for every action, right, we can ask, well, what is the purpose? What is the good? What are you trying to get from this? And it could be various things, right? It could be a product. It could be an activity. Like, so you're writing your dissertation. What is the good? Well, there's a certain good to it. There's, you're producing knowledge, and then also you want to get your degree. So there's certain goods or values that come from that. So it would be the telos, would be the purpose that you're trying to achieve.
And Professor, what do you think about the art? Art would always not have the purpose, but it is ultimate goodness is to keep us, like of it is for pleasure. It is not for good that we are thinking in a purpose way. So, what do you have to
Yeah,
say
this is
on
a good
this?
question. This is a very good question, Professor Madhvi, because what is the purpose of art? Is art like a ruling science? Well, I think back to Plato, because Plato had a critique of art. If you remember, he was very harsh about art. He thinks that art can actually distract us from the truth. Art is a copy of reality, and it can create this distraction. It can lead us to embrace fiction. So I think Aristotle would say that, yes, art has a role, but it has to be subordinate to the ruling science. So philosophers would have to understand the role of art. Art can actually corrupt people. So think of like music or art or movies, or it can permeate society and have a corrupting influence. So I think Aristotle would say that there have to be some guardrails, and art can provide inspiration and pleasure. At the same time, there have to be some guardrails that has to have its proper telos. Yeah, so I think that it would be subordinate to the political science because art art can provide pleasure, but also can corrupt. It doesn't really give us answers about how to live. So we need to have philosophy to think it through more. So yeah, that's a very good question.
All right. Yeah, I think Saima has given one question. She said that, Professor, can you read the message?
Sure, let me see. So thank you, Saima. I have a very natural query here about how can individual and society highest good be united? As subjective goal are of course selfish. Somehow, societal goal needs higher wisdom. Thus, general man chooses ethics in when he's in group or public. The education, science, we bring that wisdom. This is a very good question. I think Saima is saying that how do you unite the individual good with society's good? So if you're an individual, you're trying to achieve your personal goals, but they're also part of society, and society has a goal too. Society is trying to achieve some highest good. So this is a good question, and so I mean, what Aristotle's saying is that he has a certain kind of political system in mind.
Hmm.
The idea is that there's people who have this expertise in organizing society. They're in political science. And so I think this society would be against a liberal or individualistic society, where the idea is that you just let people do their thing to be as free as possible. So there's like a certain liberal society, like I would say like the US Constitution, right? Doesn't say that there's a specific good or a goal. The goal is to just kind of let the individual make up their own mind. Okay? So the way Aristotle thinks is very different, I think, because you have people who are actually working to organize people to a common good. Whereas in a lot of like liberal democracy, it's up to the individual how they want to live, as long as they're not hurting other people. So it's like I guess John Stuart Mill. As long as you're not hurting other people, you can be as free as you like. So but for Aristotle, it's not the same thing as that. It's something that where you have people who are actually directing society to a common good. And it would not be this liberal society. There'd be a kind of unifying identity for each individual. So that's how he would resolve it. I'm not sure if we would agree with that. But at the same time, though, in a liberal society, we kind of lack a common fabric. So we're pursuing so many different things that it seems like we lack a common identity. If you have people who are directing everybody to a common good, then you can build a sense of community more. So it's a different kind of model, not a liberal democracy, not a tyranny, but not a liberal democracy. We have people who are in charge of directing everybody to a common good. So it wouldn't just be this liberal individualism.
Is any counter question? Bhavna, you can go ahead with your question. Yeah.
I have no questions as of now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would actually, I was thinking about the recent thing about that is happening so far, uh, generative text. So we know that it is all the computational efficiency that we can see in all this AI and artificial intelligence thing. And in this case, I would like to ask you that is this also have the Telos attached to it, or it is just for the sake of our functionality?
Does AI have a telos?
Yeah, like this generative text, do it like does it serve as a Telos, or it is a kind of a randomness thing, or you can say an efficiency of human brain or computational theory, what it is exactly?
Yeah, this is a very good question as well. So, um, uh, generative AI, right? This is a very good question because we have a debate now. Like, I was asking this question to a friend of mine the other day. Should AI replace a teacher in the classroom? Right, so maybe we should have AI as a teacher. It's faster than we are. It knows more than we do. Why should we have human teachers? Because we make mistakes, we get tired, we have limitations, and we can just be replaced by AI, right? So, um, well, the fact is that maybe you could say that AI does not have a telos. When AI generates content, it is simply consolidating patterns. It's simply observing patterns, and then it just produces an appropriate pattern of ideas and words. It doesn't really have a purpose. So we have to use it for a purpose. But if we let AI govern us and to be a teacher, as a teacher, you're trying to instill a kind of purpose in people. So you're trying to model for them the right way to live, a certain kind of purpose in life. So if AI is teaching, it has no purpose. It's simply just churning out patterns. So I think this could be an argument against AI taking too big of a role. It is a great tool, but a tool has a purpose from the tool user. And so we have to make sure we use AI for a good, and we direct that because we seek a good. So if you want to use AI in the classroom or to write, it can be very dangerous because it has no telos. It's only just it's a large language model. That's what it is. It's a large language model. It's just generating patterns. It's very clever. It's very good. However, what it can do is it'll mimic your purpose. So some people say use AI for therapy. Use it for therapy. And I agree it does have a certain value there. You can process your thoughts. However, it does tend to kind of mimic what you put into it. So the danger there where it could start to just validate your own biases. It has no telos, so it's going to start mimicking. Well, you think, okay, hey, it's okay to, this thing I did is okay, right? And it'll say, well, yeah, in a way that is okay. It'll kind of start to agree with you because you can lead it to do that. It doesn't fully agree with you, but it'll start to kind of be more sympathetic to you, and you can make it do that. So it has no telos of its own. So if you use it for therapy, you have to be very careful because you can start to make it tell you, hey, yeah, you are right to sever that connection. That made sense. Uh, you need to have a human input as well to say, well, I understand what you're doing, but no, that actually was wrong. You need to have human and AI. So this is a very interesting because humans have a telos, AI does not. And so that tells us that humans have to be in charge. Humans have to use AI and not have AI take a leadership role where AI is running government. AI is running classrooms. There's a big problem with AI doing a call center. More and more companies are using AI for their call center. You call in, can you help me with my phone? My phone is broken. Well, I mean, my car is broken. Help me with my car. And you have AI. You know, it's it can help you, but also has no telos. It can also lead you into just it can never get you to your goal. So I think Professor Mabi is you're very right to latch onto this idea of a telos as a critique of AI.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
And we can always, rethink on this context of using AI and to what extent we have to use it. So again,
exactly. Yeah,
I think it's all our private needs that we are satisfying with this all generative text. It's not for the common good. Is that you mean to say particularly?
well, we have to direct it to the common good.
Yeah, we have to direct it to the common good and not just for the personal use, not for the personal
Yeah,
benefit.
or allow AI to run things. So this idea that we could have an AI teacher, it's feasible. We could have like a chat bot, and the kids could just type in their questions and get answers. But that wouldn't work. I think it would be very bad because the AI has no telos, and we as teachers we're trying to model a telos. Part of our job is to model for students a way to live, a way to approach a discipline, especially philosophy. Um, so we're trying to instill a certain telos to our students. So yeah, I think that's a very fruitful area, Professor Madvi, and I think maybe
Yeah, I think that's a very good topic for further research also because generative text as a teleos, we have not seen much development in this. Like, people are using it, but
oh,
they're not finally realizing the ultimate purpose. Like creative thinking, creative writing has totally lost. Now people are using AI for their script writing, for their dialogue writing in cinemas and all. It is, kind of losing the personal touch, the human touch.
yeah,
And definitely we are in the wrong way. So we have to work on this. That's very true.
yeah, yeah. I might write something on that. That's a very good topic, Professor Madvi. Yeah,
Yes, yes, true. Okay. Anyone
yeah,
else would like to raise a question? Okay. Professor, you also mentioned that ethics is contextual.
yeah,
Okay. And you also said that it is not exact science. I mean, there is not exactness in it. There is not uh, something which we can determine like a science is. And so, how we are going to determine the boundaries of what is right, you know, and what is right basically in the uncertain moral situations. Sometimes we cannot decide that this is morally right or not. Maybe the termination of pregnancy or rash driving, anything which is kind of immoral. So there we need to have a kind of boundary. So how we can justify this, all these acts?
yeah. So yeah, this is a good insight, Professor Madvi. He's saying that ethics is not an exact science.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. It's not like math, right? Mathematics, we can have one correct answer. We can prove something. we have proofs. In ethics, he says that there's some gray areas. So we have some uncertain situations, right? There's going to be cases of dilemma where it's very confusing what we should do. So I'm thinking of like a Sartre. He has this story of someone who they have a sick mother, and the country's at war. So this is a young man, and he has a sick mother. His country's at war. Should he go fight the war, or should he take care of his sick mother? Which one do you do? And Sartre says there's really no right answer. That you have to commit to something, and take responsibility for it freely. There's nothing that will tell you exactly what to do. So for Aristotle, I would say he's similar to that, but there are certain guidelines. So let me just give a little preview here. So maybe we can continue this discussion in ongoing talks, but he does talk about these different lifestyles. And there's several lifestyles. People will choose a highest good. And so some people, for many people, it's pleasure. So many people, they think pleasure would be the ultimate value. So they say, okay, I'm gonna organize my life so I can have more pleasure. And Aristotle says this is actually not a good lifestyle. This is like hedonism. They're hedonist. Their only objective is to pursue more and more pleasure, and it makes sense, right? Because pleasure feels good, and you naturally want more of it. But can this be the highest good? He says, well, this life is fit for more of a grazing animal. So he's saying there that if all you do is seek pleasure, you become more like an animal. You start to lose your humanity. And also you become slavish. So I'm thinking of like people who form addictions. Pleasure is good, right? We're not saying that pleasure is bad, but if you make it the center of your life, it can form addictions, and also you start to lose some of your humanity. It can start to damage your relationships. It can damage, you stop using your intellect. So he says, well, that lifestyle is not going to make us happy. If we're just pursuing pleasure, just always having a good time, we're not going to be truly happy. He talks about the life of honor. So what if we try to seek honor? So our goal would be to become a famous person, become someone who people respect. And like Professor Madhvi and others, like Aisha, we have this temptation. We're in academia. We want to be these highly respected professors. We're motivated by honor, right? Well, he says this is not going to make us happy either, because that makes other people control us. So if we are just in love with honor, people respecting us, they have control over us. We become very anxious. Like, oh, am I going to be accepted? is my article going to be published? I have to do more to make people like me, right? This can become a very dangerous path, and this can lead to unhappiness. And then he talks about people who just want to make money. Is that the highest good that will make us happy? And he says, well, no, because money is just a means. You make money to buy something. It doesn't make sense to make money your ultimate value. So there are certain objective truths. There's certain lifestyles that are they're not going to make us happy. And so, yes, we have situational contextual complexity. There's a right time, there's a right place, there's a right way of doing things. However, we can kind of rule out certain lifestyles as just not workable. A life pursuing only pleasure, a life pursuing only honor, a life pursuing money. These are things that are kind of human universals. We kind of know what's going to happen if you start, just doing nothing but pleasure. We kind of know what happens to people who do that. People who pursue only honor. We kind of know what happens to them, what they're like. They're very anxious. People who pursue money, they're not fulfilled. So maybe that can provide some help, that we can kind of rule out certain lifestyles as leading to bad outcomes.
Okay, so I think it was a very good discussion.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much, Professor Daniel. It is always good to see you coming up with a lot of interesting thoughts. And it is always
Same.
helping us to, rewind our intellectual journey and look back into the things that we have almost forgotten or almost like not talking much about. So let me just, give a conclusion about the topic and the idea that Professor Daniel has shared with us. So let me just quickly summarize. So Professor Daniel said that every action has got a telos. All human actions are basically driven by purpose only, and our final objective of our life is the purpose. Maybe it is friendship, art, anything, it is all about the purpose. And Professor Daniel also said that we have the hierarchy of ends. That means all our actions, like professional action, like he mentioned about the medicines, warfare. He also mentioned about architecture. It all serving the higher ends. And he also mentioned that some will become dysfunctional when disconnected from the common good. So common good is very much important. And he also mentioned about the highest good that uh, okay. Professor Dimitrios is joining. Okay. So he also mentioned about the thing about the highest good, that not all goods are equal and there is a supreme end we pursue for its own sake. Okay. And he also mentioned about the social and political structure, that society should be oriented towards the highest good. And we have different professions which are basically playing the supportive roles within the structured hierarchy. So basically everything is for the good end. And he talks about relativism, that values are conventional and it is not natural. But Plato and Aristotle argue for universal values rooted in human nature. Values keeps on changing, but we should always think about the common good. And he talks about the fact that ethics is contextual and not exact. So ethics is not rigid like math. It must be contextual, and not every good is always good in every situation. And of course, last he mentioned about the philosopher's role, that philosophers should be able to define and give clarity to the higher good for individuals and society, nourishing everything that we kind of achieve in our life. So that is a quick summary of the talk today. If there is anything else that I missed, Aisha, you can just point it out and help us to.
No, I think you have just wrapped it up in a very good way. Everything was covered about the talk. And the thing is, I still have a question.
Okay,
But the
you
thing
can
is, I
continue.
think it'll just, I think we can continue that in the next talk.
Okay.
The question was that then according to obviously ethics is situational, but the thing is he's obviously pointing towards the highest good. So, there is something that this highest good that is going to, that becomes the standard that is going to, judge or, dictate what, good should be in a particular situation. So, my question was actually then, according to Aristotle, what would be the ethical life or the good life? Or, what would be the summum bonum of human life? So, I think we can continue that in the next talk. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm alluding to that with his three lifestyles, pleasure, honor, and
Hmm.
money making. And he's definitely rules them out. They're not
Rules
going to
them out.
satisfy us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, excuse me.
He rules them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
so there is a highest good, and there's certain objective principles that 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 we can identify. So he's not a sophist. He's not strictly situational. There are certain universals. Yeah.
Okay, so we can just wind it up. Bhavna, you would like to say something on the talk?
It was a really interesting session. I have no questions because I was doing some other work simultaneously. I'm so sorry regarding that. I have a presentation to submit tomorrow.
Okay,
So, but yeah, so really nice talk. Thank
no
you so much.
problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, so Professor, what do you think? Shall we just end this up?
Yeah. So thank everyone for coming, and I think Demetrios came in kind of late, but
Yes,
um,
yes, I asked
but
him.
uh, but yeah. But thank you so much, and this is a wonderful community we have here. So it's very valuable to have people that are also interested in philosophy, and we can share our ideas. So feel free to reach out to me and in the chat, WhatsApp, or in any other way, and we can build community. So yeah. So and then maybe one day my dream is to go to India, or we can come here
It is
and we
our
can
dream
be
also that you come here
yeah.
and join us
It's
here.
definitely I have to plan it because I hate flying. I hate to fly, but it
Okay.
could be worth it. It would be worth it.
It will
Yeah.
be definitely,
But
definitely. We
yeah.
would be happy to host you here.
Yeah. Yeah, so something to think about. So, but yeah, so thank you so much for the wonderful community, and looking forward to future talks.
Sure. Okay.